Let's welcome up to the stage Mr. James Polidoras. He is the founder and CEO of The Compilator, who's going to talk about every marketer's concern in that area.
Hello everybody, good morning. All right, so before we get started, yes, I am from Australia, as you probably get from my accent. I run a paid media agency based in Melbourne. We deal with clients globally, both small and large. What we're going to look at today is banner fatigue, so ad fatigue and banner blindness. To start with, for those of you who aren't in marketing in the room, what is ad fatigue? So to put it quite simply, ad fatigue is people getting bored of your ad. Now, this can happen quickly, it can happen over time, but eventually it will happen. So what we find is that people will create funnels and they will show the same ad again and again and again, and that's just going to compound the issue. One of the ways that you can prevent that is setting up a funnel that is based upon audiences and user intent. If this is done correctly, it can prolong the fact of ad fatigue and actually make it easier for you to run your campaigns. Now, how can you actually recognize ad fatigue? Now, ad fatigue can be confused with diminishing returns. So the biggest difference with ad fatigue is instead of having a linear line that goes across, when you have a diminishing return, you will see a steep decline in your performance. Now, if you look, the easiest way to identify this is to look at your return on ad spend, and you will see that will decline rapidly. This is a very good chance that you've got ad fatigue. A good test you can do with them is try adding more budget to your campaign. If you don't see an immediate lift in that campaign, then it's ad fatigue. Then you need to go back, look at your ad copy, rewrite it, do some analysis, and then go from there. Okay, so why does it occur? So these are stats from the US, so we deal with a lot of US companies. These stats will be very similar no matter what region you're in, as ads are more prevalent these days. So back in the 70s, when it was more around traditional advertising, people were seeing around 500 ads per day. So that's across radio, print, outdoor, the whole traditional landscape. Now they're seeing it was 5,000 ads per day. So that's a lot of ads to see for anybody. And you're going to start just ignoring them and not really paying any attention to them unless you start being more clever about how it's actually going to work. So how can we solve ad fatigue? Now, this won't eliminate it. It will just prolong the fact of you having to go back and rewrite your ads. So, and one of the major things people forget about ad fatigue is not just limited to search ads. It can be banner ads, it can be video ads, it can be any type of ads that you put out. So it could be something as simple as just changing the way the color is on your ads and looking at color science and how different colors impact someone's decision making. So for instance, if you look at, say, if you go to an Apple store, there's a very, very good reason why it's all in white. White represents prestige, elegance, and a high-end product. Black does the same thing. When you think of a Mercedes-Benz, you think of black. When you think of a Ferrari, you think of red for speed. So look at that. You can then also test different kind of headlines and different variations. So what you also can do here is it could be something as simple as tweaking the call to action on your ad. So instead of saying inquire now, which has the connotation of saying put through an inquiry, you could say call today. You could say buy now. So actually changing those connotations can actually have a very, very big effect. Okay, use a variety of different ad copy. Any ad campaign should have more than one ad, as we all know. The golden rule there is 3 ads per ad campaign. But what you can actually do with using variation of ad copy, if you look at, say, a Google Ads campaign, within the description text, you can actually use an if statement, which basically would say something along the lines of, if this person has never come to my site before, show them this text. However, if they've come once before and showed some interest, show them this. So you can start experimenting with your ad copy and see where you go from there. Okay, swapping out images can be hugely effective. If the image or the video is of poor quality, it's going to do more harm than good. So that can be a very quick win, a very easy way to do that. as I already mentioned, use call to action, but my favorite one, and the one that is the most important, is testing. You should always be A/B testing everything you do, whether it's content, whether it's ad copy, whether it's a site layout. You can use things like CRO and optimize it to test a site layout. And analytics. Now, analytics is one of the most important parts of this entire process. But there is a caveat there. Your analytics needs to be clean. So for instance, if you're an online store and you sell through PayPal or through Afterpay or Klarna or any app that takes you off the site and gets you back onto the site, analytics doesn't know the difference. So it's going to count that as a new session, and it's also going to fetch your data. So the very first step is make sure your data is clean, but then use the data. Go into your analytics, go into your page views, go into your user flow. See how people are dropping off within that process. So it may not be ad fatigue, it may be that they come through to the site and they're just not converting, and that's going to look very similar. So this is as an example of what you can do. So this is called ad customization. So the way that this essentially works is you write a piece of content, and here you'd put in a customization. This is for a time of a sale. So you might say that the sale ends on a certain date, and that part there where it says 4 hours and 1 hour will dynamically change based upon what's happening with that sale. So example of this, earlier this year we were approached to build out a campaign for a large retailer back in Australia. So they're national retailers, they've got about 500 locations across Australia, and we were asked to build out their campaign. Now this took about 60 hours to build out, totaling about 700 campaigns and about 120,000 ads. The bulk of the time was spent not on the setup of the campaign itself, but on the ad copy. Changing that, adapting that, changing everything from the slugs to utilizing ad customizations and if statements within the ads, so that as someone was coming to the ad and going to the site, on each visit, they were shown something different. So if they went to a certain page, if they did a certain action, they were shown a different set of ads if they didn't purchase. So customizing that, making it more relevant to the end user is going to help prevent ad fatigue, because essentially they've got to see the ad once, twice, and make a purchase instead of having to see it again and again and again. All right, so banner blindness. Now, this is happening more and more and more these days, and it's a very good reason why this is happening. So ever since 1995, when I first got into digital, you could very easily get a conversion through a display ad. It was very easy. It was around 2% conversion rate in CTR. Now you get about 0.05, in some cases less, some cases 0.02. Now, people are just bored of ads, and they don't want to see them. It's why ad blockers exist. So, instance, I used to work at Google, and while I was there was a rule where you couldn't use ad blockers on your computers. It was disallowed, but everybody still did it because nobody wanted to see their ads. So how can you identify it? Now, it's very easy to identify banner blindness if you have the correct tools. Now, as you all will aware, this is a heat map, and you will see that the bottom part and the top part, they've got a lot of action happening, especially in the middle, but then there's nothing happening on the banner. Now, this happens a lot. We find the easiest way is to think outside the box. Standard banners like this don't convert well because there's no need for anyone to click on it, no need for anyone to act on it. You could very easily change that to a video banner, a video slider, to increase the conversion rate and interaction on that banner itself. So why does it occur? So there's a few different reasons why, but they're all very, very similar. So user tasks. So there are very two distinct ways in which someone uses a website, either very directly, or they go and they just aimlessly go on the site trying to find what they're looking for. And this is very evident if you ever use heat mapping, things like Hotjar, Vimo Insights, and so on. You can actually look at the recordings and you'll see two types of people. The ones that go straight to contact us and want to just get it over and done with, And the ones that want to go and look at the images and go about us and back and forth, and you might have some people who take 30 seconds and others who take a whole hour just to do one action. Ad clutter. So there's a lot of sites that, especially when you look at your comparison sites, that would just put more than one ad on the page. So you're competing in a very noisy environment to actually get your share of voice. So that's going to become more prevalent as we come along. So the easiest way is keep ads on any given page to at least one ad per page. If you can get that done, if you are using AdSense on your site, try not to overload it, because it would actually backfire. Shared bandwidth. This is very similar to ad clutter, but what it's basically saying is it's a very noisy environment. And what's happening is you're competing with everybody else. You're competing with all those 5,000 ads that people are seeing per day. So what's going to happen is you need to find a way to differentiate yourself and actually become more clear and more precise with your messaging. And this is where content is very, very important. So if you have content that is engaging, whether that be video, whether that be a HTML5 ad, it's going to cut through the noise a lot quicker and have more of an impact. Messaging components is more to do with the way that people think. So it's about a perceived bias. So people generally don't like advertising, they don't like banners, they find them intrusive. That perceived bias to what they're doing is going to affect them when they're just going to ignore it. They're going to ignore it, go straight to what they're going for, and just not bother about the banner. Familiarity. This is about people who know your site. So they've come to the site before, they know exactly what they're looking for, they know exactly where it is. So they're just going to go straight there, click on what they want to get, and leave again. And the perceived usefulness. This is more about people thinking that what you're doing doesn't actually relate to them. So for instance, this happens a lot, especially if you've got more than one person using the same computer. So if say my partner wants to use a laptop and she's looking at a dress, I'm going to see ads for dresses, and I don't need that, right? So that is not useful for me. Unless you have people logging in and out and using their own profiles and having separate cookies being captured, that's going to happen more, and there's not much you can actually do about that if you've got more than one person using a computer. But if it's just you, maybe you've looked for a present for somebody and then you don't need it anymore. All right, so just some practices on how to solve banner blindness. So as I mentioned before, and as it's been mentioned a lot through the last 3 days, use relevant content. So the content that you're using, it needs to give the person what they need as quickly as possible and as conveniently as possible. So try non-standard size, colors, and ad format. So we're not talking about mobile here. What we're talking about here is you might utilize lightbox ads that are more engaging, that you can click on and actually open up and actually have a video playing. You might utilize HTML5. Anything that's going to differentiate yourself and make it clear and easier for someone to interact is what we're trying to do there. And then optimize for mobile. Make sure that you've got a banner size, if you're doing advertising, that is made for mobile. Make sure your site is responsive enough to change for mobile. There is nothing more frustrating for a user than to go onto a site, to try use it, and have elements that are too close together so you can't click on them properly, or have a video that doesn't play. So make sure if you're using video on your site as a banner, make sure it's hosted correctly, make sure you're using a CDN. Do everything you can along the way to make it easier for people who are using it on a mobile. So participating in affiliate programs, this one can work, but you need to do your research. There are a lot of affiliate programs out there that are absolute junk. So research them very carefully, do your research before actually going on any of them. We already mentioned you use multiple formats, but we're talking here is referring back to what we were talking about, HTML5, video formats, lightbox ads, making sure you're using the entire gamut that is available to you within each interface. And then experiment. When we say experiment, we mean have some fun with it. So remember that at the end of the day, you're talking to people behind the screen, but it's still a person there. So have some fun with it. We did a project for a wireless ISP, so internet provider back in Melbourne, where the entire project was for about a year, and we just went through with a new branding strategy alongside the branding agency, and we just had fun with it. We started poking fun. So back in Australia, we've got what we call the NBN, which is like basically their new broadband internet that doesn't really work. So we were just poking fun at them, calling them out in the ads. We did a open house at a retail. There's a retail show called The Block in Australia. So we did a stand there where we had a VR element where you could come by, go on a VR tour of the actual apartment outside while you're waiting. So we had some fun with it. We were cheeky. We changed the tone of voice, and it actually worked very, really well. All right, so a couple ways on how to solve this. So if you're using stock standard ads like this one here, you need to make sure that all the elements of one, they're clear, they've got enough room to breathe, especially your logo. Keep it up high. Make sure that you've got a clear call to action. You need to tell people what to do, and make sure that it's complementary to your brand. If you can give everything enough room to breathe from a design element, you're going to have a much better success rate than if you don't. Now, this is an example of another type of ad. So what we've got here is we've got a stock standard ad if I just found online through a Google image search. And then on the other side, we've got a HTML5 ad. Now, the HTML5 ads are great. They can be animated to capture your attention a lot more quickly. This could have been very easily changed to have the slot machine actually spin and stop. This one here will likely will not perform as well as this one here because it actually pervades the message through an image and through movement. Now, for HTML5 ads, you don't need to be a coder to actually create these. There are online tools. Google has their own online tool, so all you have to search for online is HTML5 generator, and you can actually use a tool where all you have to do is upload images and animate it. However, if you are into coding and you can use the Adobe suite, you can actually code them and actually have it done differently as well. While we're on the topic of different ad formats, one of the better ad formats that you can actually use to actually get someone's attention is video. Video is highly engaging. It's going to get people's attention a lot quicker than anything else out there because you can tell a lot more in a 6-second video than you can ever tell in an image. So along this, if you're looking at, say, let's look at the Google element of it. Within Google Ads, there's multiple types of formats you can use. So search, display, YouTube, shopping, other main ones. Within those, the subcategories. So we won't go into that right now. If you want to know more about that, let me know. But if you're using YouTube advertising, you can use this very same ad here as a banner ad. Then you can also have that as a bumper ad as well, and then as an in-stream ad. So you can actually set it up so that the bumper ad is 6 seconds, very short, quick to the message. The in-stream ad is no longer than 30 seconds is the rule. You can go longer. There's no hard rule about it, but keep it to 30 seconds because you can skip. Now, regardless of what type of ad you're doing in video, whether it's Lightbox, whether it's in-stream ad, use the first 5 seconds well, because after that, they will skip, most likely, unless you're using multiple ads. The first 5 seconds of that ad need to be told, need to be succinct, need to get the message across so that the user gets everything they need in the first 5 seconds where they actually might keep watching. Right, so to summarize, there are a very, very close similarities between banner blindness and ad fatigue on how to solve them. And it all comes down to knowing your audience, having the campaign set up in a technical manner that makes it easy for a user to use it and see the ad and not get bored of them. So, for instance, the client I mentioned earlier, they've got so they've got the normal campaigns, so there's 5 different types of campaigns they've got in the Google Ads account. One of them is remarketing. So the normal campaigns take care of the first and second visit through if statements and ad customizers. The remarketing campaigns are set up in ad groups, and each ad group is set up to be a different user intent. So the way we've done that is by using audiences and analytics to negative out and include different audiences at different stages of the campaign. If you are going to be doing this, this is really important. Don't use the Google Ads marketing tag on your site. It won't work for this. Utilize your back-end tools and analytics by simply going to admin, audience definitions and audiences, and set up your audiences based upon URL and audience intent, because you have a lot more to choose from in the back-end of our analytics than you do with the Google Ads tag. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, James. Oh, yeah, and this is working even stronger. James, the last thing you did, you told us about analytics. Can you repeat that? Because I didn't get the strategy.
Yeah, sure. So within analytics, you've got an admin tool. So within admin, there's a part called audience definitions. Within audience definitions, there's audiences. Now, audiences in analytics are generally used for remarketing. So within audiences, you can set it up in many different ways. You can set it up for someone who hasn't converted. You can set it up for someone who spent a certain amount of time on a certain page. Any data that is in analytics can be used in a way within your audiences to the point of negative out demographics, so only showing ads to male or female at a certain age and demographic.
Okay, so you use that instead of the Google tag, you said?
Instead of the Google Ads remarketing tag, use the audiences and analytics, you'll get a better result.
Okay, thank you so much, James. Thank you.